Welcome, everyone, to another episode of our podcast, Smart Man, Smarter Woman, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And thank you very much for giving us a listen today. I am Steve Lopes.
And I am Juliet Aurora.
And we are your co-hosts. And as always, before we get started, let's hear a few words from my awesome co-host, that smarter woman herself, Juliet. How are you doing today, Juliet? You look fabulous.
Thank you, Steve. That's so kind. I am excellent, thank you. The weather has been kind of all over the place. I was trudging through snow this morning, and then it was like a polar vortex of wind this afternoon. So who knows what's going on? And I keep thinking, I need to get us, on a beach in Mexico, Mayan Riviera, Costa Rica. That's where we need to be running our business. So I think that we need to focus on that a little bit harder.
Well, as you know, you'll hear no complaints from me, and I don't want to hear any more talk of polar vortexes either. Okay, please. I don't mind a little bit of snow, a little bit of cold. We do live in Canada. It is winter, but polar vortex, I'm not even sure what it is, but it just doesn't sound good.
It sounds cold.
Yes, it does. It sounds very cold. Anyway, let's get to our show and bring in our very special guest who joins us today. Actually, probably if I stuck my head out the window and yelled, she could probably hear me. So that's how far away she is from where we are. Tracy Lamourie is from Hamilton, Ontario. And welcome, Tracy, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
Our pleasure. So why don't we start out, as per usual, with if you could perhaps tell us a little bit, share your own entrepreneurial journey and talk a little bit about maybe what you do now and how you help people.
Sure. I'll start with the last part and then go back real quick to give it context. And I'll try to do it in the quick version. So I'm quote unquote, if you read my bio, I'm an international award-winning publicist. I work across industries, literally across countries. I work with all the people that you think a publicist works with, which is, people in TV, authors, public speakers, people in music, filmmakers, all that stuff is about half of my client base. And the other half of my client base, which is what my book, Get Repped, Build Your Brand with Effective Public and Media Relations is about people like the listeners, people like you, people like me, entrepreneurs, experts in various fields who either have a message and they don't know how to get it out to media, and that's a mystery to them, or they haven't realized yet that they have every right possibility and ease of getting into media as the people that they see on television in their industry. And the only difference between them and you is that they told the media about what they're doing, essentially. So I kind of break down all that for people in consulting and in speaking, but I also do the real work that brought me to the international award-winning publicist. I write the press releases, I think of the strategies, I reach out to media, I work till 2 a.m, making sure every reporter that I can think of has my client's messaging. But the way I got here, which is normally it will be a 4-year trajectory in university, is the norm, or people come to it from working in media for years. And I had a little bit of media, I did some radio and all that, but basically in my life, I was in marketing, just in sales, entry level pretty much in my 20s, but I was always a writer, and I had a radio show before that. So I was used to caring about activist things and thinking I had a voice and that I could change the world. And somehow I managed to. And along the process, I ended up learning how to write press releases. It took me about 15 years to realize I had skills that I could actually monetize and ultimately build a crazy life that I love, that other people look at, when it's not COVID, it's VIP parties and 3 a.m. working, but also VIP parties and travel and all that stuff. And it all started because I tried to help somebody and I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a radio show anymore, but it was the early days of the internet and had the power of learning how to figure out how to make a website. And then what was I going to do with it? Figure out how to write a press release. And it happened to be a guy who was innocent on death row and nobody was listening. But my husband and I over in Pennsylvania, and for some reason, with the hard young activists again, for some reason, my husband and I got involved and we felt like, well, gee, what can we do? We made it public, started letting the world know. A couple of years later, a law firm got involved that was looking for a case of actual innocence. And they wouldn't have heard about him without that kind of noise we'd made. They got involved, took several years, a lot of years. Meanwhile, for the whole 20 years, we were still doing this, what we now look on as like a pro bono campaign, but ultimately we were just activists helping day to day, was still in touch. He was freed in 2017. The world knows he's innocent. He's about to get all kinds of money. The Rolling Stone has done features. Hamilton Spectator did a feature called Two Bleeding Hearts and a Dead Man Walking. But the article was a great article. The headline was funny, but the Spec almost won. They were up for an international or a national newspaper award for that article. 2 or 3, they were in the running for it. So yeah, so basically, and bringing it back to the business story, because not everybody has that crazy trajectory. To the business side, about 2 years before he was released, the context of that. But anyway, whenever it was, 15 years after I started that, I suddenly had the aha moment. Wait a minute. Hold on. This is actually something. Isn't that called a publicist? Because we've gotten on CNN, MSNBC, us, not just about that case, which is impossible to get attention in those days when someone was still in prison. But we had no legal, or experience and no real media experience. And I got through the power of my press releases, us on CNN, MSNBC, A&E, Court TV, ABC, Fifth Estate did a 45-minute documentary about our work, me and my husband, so suddenly I had this wow moment, because all the time we're still telemarketers, or my husband's doing whatever, we're just entry-level job. So suddenly I had this aha moment where I was like, you know what? And I don't know why I didn't have it before or why I had it then, but everybody should have it, because y'all don't have this kind of story, but you all have something you love, a hobby, something you put a lot of passion or time into that you never maybe thought that it could actually be monetized. And hey, turn into a job you love. Crazy. Hard to tell that story in a really short version, but I think that's my quickest yet.
You did an awesome job. That was great. And congratulations on your success. I was looking forward to having you on the podcast, because I have to admit, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I've started and built several businesses, and spent lots of money on advertising, lots of money on marketing, and never even thought about a publicist or a public relations person to help me, because I always had the thought they were just too expensive. That a PR person, that's what a corporation has, right? Like if it's a huge business, they have a PR department. But here I am as a small.
And you're not going to hire an individual in your company, so you're not going to have an in-house PR, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So, and I don't think I'm alone in.
No, it's super common. 80-90% of entrepreneurs, and even further, you're like ahead of most entrepreneurs to even be thinking in that regard. Because a lot of times I speak to entrepreneurs and they're like, they literally say like, PR, isn't that for sports stars and and it's like, no, even especially now when you heard the word thought leadership, if you're not out there getting in the media, getting on podcasts, getting quoted in the Star, getting, somebody else in your industry is, those opportunities, so there's two things. There's a press release, which you've heard of, but probably never thought of doing, which is, your media advisory, your press release, where you're telling the media what you're doing, or you're putting out your thoughts on something topical that's happening in different ways to insert yourself. Then there's the opposite of that, the whole world, which 90% of entrepreneurs don't know. Just like there's these pod match services that introduce podcasters to, influential guests and everything, there are services that publicists have, and even some that entrepreneurs can sign on to. But problem is, you don't know if you don't know the art of the pitch and you don't understand what you're doing, you can burn more bridges than you can build, right? So you got to be very careful before you go and use those resources which are available to really understand the pitch, because your pool of reporters and everybody is limited. You don't want to be throwing crap at them where they're going to close the door and not open your next email. So that's super important. But before you even get into that, so the other side of the press release is what I call the opposite of a press release, which is reporters are already going to be doing stories. They've been assigned stories. But guess what? They're not experts in every single thing in the world. So they have a story due at Tuesday. They're not going to go out and call every, real estate agent, for example, on the block. They come every day. I see quotes. Oprah.com, Reader's Digest. These are all things I've gotten clients into using this service. New York Times, Good Housekeeping, doing an article on whatever with a deadline at 2:00, looking for somebody who can speak to, blah. Some of them are generic things like entrepreneurs. How to Rough 2020? What are your, some things you're doing for 2021? Open call to entrepreneurs to be featured in New York Times. So one moment like that, and those are free. You can't buy your way into any of those. You have to be chosen. That's why the difference between editorial and advertorial, another impossible thing for so many entrepreneurs to get their head around. So yeah, what I'm challenging people, because you're right about the price point. Quite often, if you go with a PR, you don't know what you're talking about, and you go to a big PR house, what they're going to do is they're going to put a senior person like me to talk to you, and then they're going to have a team of 5 juniors, $20 an hour, right out of universities that are actually doing the work. Right? So you think you're getting some big, and you're paying more because you have that team. But what I have, I make it smaller, right? So I only take on a limited number of clients, but it's a 2-person team, me and my partner. And but I do all the writing. I do the press releases. I do the contact with media. I'm the one that you get, when you hire me. So I make it affordable because I do a lot of the speaking, and I've understood now that entrepreneurs don't, they don't understand what I'm selling. Unless they come to me because they see my work already, and they see their other friend has all of a sudden hired me, and a month later he's got 2 newspaper articles been quoted here, he's on TV, and they're like, whoa, how'd you do that? Then they want it. Then they understand. But if I just say, hey, I'm going to get you in the news, nobody believes it because they don't see themselves as that person. They don't understand that process. So I started a thing where instead of being, $3,000 a month, 3 months minimum, which is my corporate price for if I have to sit in a boardroom with 10 people and have all these meetings where 15 people are deciding what the message is, my price is going up really high because it's annoying. It's harder. The messaging is muddled. I gotta figure out all of these personalities before we even get to the public messaging. So I like to work with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and and creatives and people with messages and nonprofits and stuff. But if you're an entrepreneur and you come to me, I'm not going to say $3,000 a month, 3 months minimum, because I know you're not going to take $10,000 out of your pocket with something you don't understand, even if you have it, and a lot of us don't, right? But even if you do, you're not going to just throw that out and go, it's a lot of money to just bet on. So I started doing, if you've heard me on the podcast and you don't believe that this could be you, because I know you're thinking, that I do for under $1,000. I have one price point of $599 and one at $1,000. The $599 is way less than you would get anywhere, but it's superior PR still. But what we do is there's a couple of things you're getting. We're not doing full service for that, obviously. We're saying this is what you can expect. You're going to get an article in this. I'm going to pitch. You're going to get a full pitch that you can keep later, whether you decide to hire me again next month, or you decide to just do it yourself maybe. Now you're going to understand after a month with me how you place yourself, what that means with pitch, where we can send you. And then you have that. You could just do that on your own later when you see opportunities. You didn't, And then for the closer to $1,000 a month, and there are also deals if you sign on for 3 months, both of these go cheaper. For the $1,000 a month, then you're talking the full service PR, the kind of stuff my Hollywood clients get at a lower price period, the exact same service.
Okay.
It's just a sliding scale, which is Zoom calls, strategy calls, talks, multiple press releases, media advisory specific to you. You want to talk radio? Okay, what messages are good for talk radio? We'll reach out nationally to every talk radio and see if we can get your spot. Chances are we'll get one. Once we get one, we'll get another. Right. Podcasts, I'm really recommending now because I was just seeing them as an alternative to media because I'm a media person. Right. The more I do them, I've been hired by a couple of podcasters now, and I'm realizing we weren't even, just because we're all entrepreneurs and their understanding, and I'm realizing it's a huge networking. Podcasts in general now are the new networking, not just in the little ways, but they're really targeted networking and marketing. I'm not a marketing expert. PR is the opposite. It's the cousin of marketing, earned media as opposed to, but clearly if you're into marketing and advertising, still it's about visibility in the public eye. So if you ever get an ad that everyone knows you paid for 30 seconds, which costs so much money on, say CFRB in Toronto, or like I do for my clients, I get you a 45-minute, not all my clients, depends, has to be a good pitch, has to fit, but I've very regularly, I've gotten clients interviewed on things on CFRB and other stations like it. So you got a massive audience, not for 30 seconds, ding, 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 comment by my product, but for 30 minutes, 40 minutes where the host that they trust and listen to every night is talking to you in detail and laughing. Oh yeah, that product sounds great. Not necessarily product. It's about you as an expert. You have to get away from selling your product. I sell you, and then you sell your product or whatever, but you're there to talk about your expertise.
Okay, so let's take a step back for our entrepreneurs who are in our audience that don't necessarily understand the difference between PR and advertising and marketing. You touched on a couple of points, but maybe
quickly, yeah,
a little bit. So from an advertising and marketing standpoint, you're basically putting the messaging out of what you sell and who you are. So it's all outbound. So does that mean that PR is inbound?
We will continue with our conversation right after this message from a friend of the show. AIS Solutions is an award-winning cloud accounting firm serving small businesses all across Canada. If you want to move your bookkeeping from the desktops of the dark ages to the cloud and get your financials wherever you are, whenever you want them, then contact AIS Solutions' team of trained professionals today at www.aissolutions.ca. And now, back to our conversation.
No, the difference basically is thinking about the editorial versus advertorial. Advertorial is when you're controlling the message 100%. You're paying for what's going out. What's going in the paper is, what you've submitted to the ad department, the words that you wrote, right? So when we're writing like a little article basically about you, a little media advisory, a press release, trying to interest the media to come and interview you. Or sometimes we're writing a story about you that we're submitting as a royalty-free article that they may just submit. That's a nice little article about you. But primarily the job of a press release is to convince that newsroom, that editor, that reporter, that journalist, TV producer, that what you have to say is going to be of interest to their audience. So they should have you on to interview you. So it's not so much we have to get away from entrepreneurs thinking, hey, I have a product. You're not there to sell your product. It's never going to get on the news. It's about you as the expert. So if you're even if you're like a lawn care provider, you think, gee, why would they interview me on the news? Well, whatever it is you do, you have expertise, you have knowledge that the mainstream doesn't have. So there are media opportunities, whether in the general media, like to teach us all some aspect of something we don't have, like a news thing comes up and the lawn care guy has an understanding of something about it because of his expertise. You know what I mean? So that could be a topical release. Bob from Bob's Lawn Care knows this about this. And that's an opportunity to insert yourself into like a different story. You're not the story. Right. You're just referred, you're quoted, you're referenced as a trusted source. So that third-party credibility that they call the social credibility these days, but just what it's always been. The reason advertising is used at as seen on TV in the days when people were more naive is because that attached that cachet as though you were being interviewed, even though you were just buying the spot. So PR is the opposite of that, is earned media, meaning you can't buy. You can pay a publicist to strategically write the words and be compelling and place you and convince that reporter and find the opportunities that you will be fit into. You know what I mean? But once you pay a publicist, none of those opportunities that we're presenting to you are paid opportunities. You can't buy your way into that New York Times article. You can't buy your way into the Cosmo. So the fact that you're in there elevates you as the expert. So if you have, 10 as quoted in, so very quickly, no matter what my client does, and I have we're not talking about the media people right now, right? But I have, clients that are luxury real estate agent, a woman who owns, some health clinics, a psychologist, a SEO marketing guy, a neuromarketing guy. All these people, they have no media. And it's my job to find and build that media. So I can sometimes find them. One client hired me, she had 26 years old, zero media. I was able to find a perfect Good Housekeeping print magazine, Good Housekeeping. They were doing an article that fit her perfectly. I convinced the reporter to interview her. When I did, she wowed them. So first off the gate, she's in a 150-year-old print magazine, Good Housekeeping. And from there, for the next year, she's got tons of other media from that. Because all we have to do now, if she wants any interview on that topic, is as featured in this article in Good Housekeeping. And everyone's like, ooh, clearly she's an expert now. She's the same expert she was the day before she was featured in Good Housekeeping. But now 50 other people with her exact expertise will be out of the running and they're going to interview her because she was featured in that, and they can say that in the intro. And so every success builds on every other success, you know, to the point where now 90% of the time, or not 90, like now I'm surprised if I want to be on, you know, an interview, and because I know how to target it, I know who my audience is, I know what they're looking for. So 99%, because I'm good at the pitch as well as my qualifications now. If I, you know, want to be on something, I send my thing and they're like, yeah, for sure, looks legit. When are we going to have her on? Because I have 50 other people who've said that before, that they can listen to those, they can go and hear those segments. So it all just builds. And it starts when you get out, you know, you start putting yourself out there, like everything.
Wow.
Absolutely. I love the comparison. I think it's a lot clearer where it's, you know, paid media versus earned media. I think that's a great comparison of the two.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what you're trying to elevate is the brand, so that they become a trusted expert in whatever industry the entrepreneur is in. That you're not trying to sell the widget that they produce or provide, but have them identified as being the expert on that widget in that industry, so that people will actually get to know who they are. And when they're looking for that widget, that
They'll
name.
trust them as the provider. They'll be like, oh, that guy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's, it's true. That's why people will say, well, what would be the ROI in marketing? It's not the same mindset as marketing. They're like, can I give you a percentage? No, you can't give your publicist a percentage unless you want to give me a percentage of like your whole company, because you don't know what's going to, like, my job is to make it so big and get you everywhere that you can't even know. Like, some work I did work for a completely unknown little 13-year-old. I just left her a message when she sang. And I said, I got to get this to some media friends last June. I got her in, you know, Global, CBC, CTV, all that stuff. Well, just a week ago, like that was 6 months ago, right? You never know who's going to see it and what's going to build from that. We've done all kinds of other work since then. But from that very first media appearance, a week ago, we got a call from the Ontario Black History Council, which is, you know, the mayor's event, you know, for their February event, the mayor's going to be there, the chief of police. And like, this is the thing that all of the illustrious people go to, right? And they said, we saw her, a little 13-year-old singer on Global News, which was 6 months ago. And we thought, you know, it'd be great to have her on our stage with that message. And, you know, we'd also like to pay her. So now she's paid, professionalized from that. So now there's not only is her message expanded, which has been all the last 6 months, she got a million other opportunities, but even just from that one first media, little 1 minute news clip, right? People that had the power to put her on an illustrious stage, not just a stage, but in front of people that who knows what's going to happen when she sings in front of, and this is going to be virtual this year, of course, but 800 people that are all of the people that do all the events and all that. Inevitably more is going to develop that we can't even imagine from that one. You know what I mean? And that's literally because she had a publicist who sent one email and the reporter was like, that sounds like a good story. It went on TV, but it can be literally that quick. I got a million stories like that. And these are just regular people who had no media presence. Yeah. But that's how media finds you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I was thinking, your job must be a lot more challenging now than it was even just a few years ago, because there are now so many places where people get their news, get their content. How do you
navigate all that?
How do you manage that? How do you even determine, where you should be trying to get these people when there's so many options?
Yeah, that's where the three, like I said, it was funny. I came up and I said to my husband the other day, because if you go look at my Instagrams, I have like daily successes, big one, little one, literally boom, 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 10 a day, boom, boom, boom. And I was just thinking about it as I'm, chilling out the other day. And I came up to my husband and I said, half of those things that are half of the magic that I do, literally magic that I create to people, where they wake up and they're like, oh my God, how'd you do that? You know what it really is me staying up till, it's obviously strategy, but me staying up till 3 a.m, researching, finding all these things, and then determining what, that's where it comes in about what their audience is, and how to, even if someone doesn't have a big audience in this, is it something that can help place them, like is it something where they have free reign to write about something they haven't maybe spoken about before? So if they're an expert, like I had a consultant who's an expert and developed her 10 years as a journalist and a writer now in the emerging Canadian cannabis industry, the legal industry. So she's got a great name in that, but that's all she's ever written about in the public eye, right? But she's not just an expert in that. She's also an expert in the gig economy, and she wants to start writing about the gig economy. But she said to me, what do I do there? I have what do I just say? Hey, here's all my other stuff on cannabis, and it could be anything. It could be on automotive design. If she'd done a career in automotive design, but now she wants to segue that. How do you do that? And as well, that's where, the strategy comes in, and you start thinking, okay, where can I write an article where, if it's well written, that I can do a guest blog about this, even just based on and then you find that one place, and then I know, certain, like I said, even if you get the $500 and change thing for me now, I know, because of my relationship with certain editors, and none of these are paid that you can pay for, but because I know what they're looking for, and they know that I've always given them good content, I know how to shape a story where it will be shocking if they didn't accept it. You know what I mean? Because they take regular content. I'm a regular contributor. I know how to, and I know how to, when I say shape a story, I just mean how to tell the story, what part of the story to tell. Like, is it a profile of this guy, like a success, or is it talking more about mindset or something, and we're quoting this person? There's a million different ways, right? So there's always ways to, it's harder and easier now because there are so many different platforms.
What do you do with an entrepreneur who has a great story to tell, has expertise, but just doesn't present themselves well? Like, there are just some people, right, who maybe because they're not comfortable, right? Like even just talking about what they do.
Yeah.
How would you help them?
So this happens a lot. Actually, I had a conversation this week with a new client who they were like, they loved it all, but then they were like, but really in the end, they have some anxiety, and they talked about their personal issues and what they deal with in general life. They were like, I really want to be speaking out about this stuff. I think I have something to say, but I don't know. And they said, I want to do podcasts, but I don't think I can. I said, well, we don't have to do podcasts then. You don't have to do TV interviews. Do you know? See, some people can't write. If you think about writing, it's going to send them into a tizzy and they're going to go like nuts. Those people, we can do a phone call. I can ask you the questions and transcribe them. So now you've got it written. You never had to talk to the reporter, because 90%, like the Reader's Digest, the ones I mentioned there, they send, hey, this is what we're looking for. Oh, yeah, I got a client that fits that. Here's the stuff. Sure, here's the questions. And maybe 1 out of 5 times, maybe it's a phone interview, but mostly it's by print. So there's a whole bunch of room for people to just share their expertise by writing. And where that's not easy, someone like me or their friend, they could maybe transcribe it using, Google, whatever, transcribe, and then go back and type it. There's all kinds of ways like that, to think. So think about that. Think about just speaking to yourself and then writing it out and doing an article. Things like Medium, which looks like the Huffington Post, and most people think it is, it's actually as easy as making a Facebook page. You literally go on, put your picture, and write whatever. So if you can write a nice article, even if it's just 500 words, like similar to a blog, but try to make it a little better, because then it might get shared, and then you start to develop your thought leadership. But even if you just have a little bit, it looks like an article. So you start sharing that, you put that on your website, people, and it just starts building that. So you can find, like you said, there's so many different forums now. There's a million different ways to find your comfort zone. If you're a good talker, hit a podcast, see how you do. There's some small ones that don't have a lot of profile yet. And then there's giant ones that are bigger than any TV show, so there's a huge range. And we all have the same power, because we're all sitting here with the same screens and the same internet connection. So it's just a matter of feeling the confidence in yourself to realize, like I always say, the difference between you and the experts you see on TV in your field is that somebody told the media what those guys were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you must have built over the years a heck of a network. That,
it's crazy.
Because again, right, it's, like, how do they must rely on you to provide them with good quality, or they're never going to come back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I always say it's never ever happened, never, like literally never, that someone's paid me for a month or whatever period of time and hasn't had anything. They're always happy. They're always more amazed that this could happen because again, people don't really see themselves as the one that's going to be. So they're always like, oh my God. And they always renew, or if they can't for budgetary reasons, they come back later and they recommend 5 friends to me. That's just my business model. I've never had to place an ad. It's always like that. So yeah, it's interesting to see people develop that and to understand themselves as, that expert. It's fun.
Yeah.
Which is why I refuse to just do the corporate work. Yeah. Also, it's really annoying to like try to do PR by feet, by like, again, a group by boardroom, But also I really do like, for the same reason I like to work with artists. People build their vision and their dreams, and you empower people, and and then they can empower other people, and pretty neat.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious you love what you do. What do you love about it, I guess? What is the favorite thing, if you had to say, here's my favorite thing about, I love what I do.
Yeah. So other than the obvious that I have a job I love, which is all the fun parts of it and all that stuff, but really it comes down to 2 things. I love the fact, and I'll tell you what, there's power to it, the power of being able to know how to use the media. And I'm conscious of that. And I've used it a million times to help people who haven't paid me, for things. People know to call me when there's an injustice and something wrong. When people feel like they can't do anything, they're like, call Tracy, because she knows how to get people to listen. And I love that, because I do. And it's not magic. It's just that I have that skill because I've learned it, right? And so I teach it to other people. And then, that's one thing that I really love. And then secondly, I'm honored, literally, this is no PR spin because nothing I say is, but I'm literally honored every day that the people that come to me and trust me, the diverse, and I say diverse in every way, meaning across industries and diverse in population, people that come and trust me for their important messaging with their businesses, with their not-for-profits, with their music, and I'm honestly surprised sometimes, like Rosa Parks' cousin, with her movie about Rosa and book about Rosa Parks and her civil rights legacy. I'm honored to have been working with her for 5 years. I mean, I can make $1 million, $1 billion in my life, and nothing in my career is ever going to surpass sitting in Detroit in 2 rows of Rosa Parks family members watching that documentary film, and then seeing, my name thanked in the credits, and I'm with Rosa Parks family member. Like, so that's, to be chosen and to be trusted with that kind of message to me is a huge honor, and that I can call that my job and make money from it. And then now I'm honored to speak to people about it and further elevated by being on all these kind of shows and sharing, wisdom. So I don't know. I feel like this has all happened for a reason. So, I talk about it, whatever message people want to get from it.
Yeah.
Yes, it definitely comes across as to how passionate you are about what it is you do, which is great to see.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I talk too fast. I talk too much. I try to condense it, but some of this stuff, like how do you tell that origin story in 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, no, like I say, it's great. And that brings us to one of our favorite parts of the show, which is our Smart Man, Smarter Woman version of James Lipton's Q&A from the Actors Studio. And that's where we ask each one of our guests the same 6 questions. And if you're ready, Tracy, we would like to get started with you.
All right.
All right. Question 1. What one word best defines an entrepreneur?
Passion.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I always wanted to be growing up, I wanted to be a writer or a journalist. So I kind of somehow weirdly did that. So I don't know if I would still say that, but I also wanted to be a teacher. I don't know, I guess writer, I guess journalist, maybe TV journalist.
Okay.
But like actual journalist, where you got to go into the scary zones and that.
All right. What profession would you like never to attempt?
Military.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
Oh. Sound or noise. Does like John Lennon songs count?
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay. What book would you recommend for entrepreneurs? If you could just recommend one.
Okay, yeah, that's a hard one to answer because I have so many clients that actually write, but I actually truthfully am going to say everybody should read this one. And you'd think, what? But one of my first books that I ever worked on, and I was like, what the heck? Why would they need that? I didn't really believe. It's called The 30% Solution. It's for my client, Lou Bayer, and she's a civility expert, which you're like, what? But the book is about the 30% solution, how civility in the workplace can help you literally in the bottom line retain customers and retain your employees. And so it literally has a financial impact of up to 30% on companies. And that's hugely impactful because the way we treat each other really matters. We're seeing in the world right now, like we're not even seeing or hearing each other. It's crazy. So like we need to get back to like in our lives, in our businesses, everywhere else, just, taking deep breaths, being civil, which is different than just being nice, And so I think that in this context and these days, that would be, I think, for all of us. And it's definitely a book for entrepreneurs. So.
Awesome. And finally, when your own entrepreneurial journey is completed, what do you hope your legacy is?
I want to move into, other than all the messaging that I'm proud of and all that stuff, I also want to move into now, which is a new thought for me, becoming a job creator and learning how to that's a whole different thing. But I think that I had a weird thought the other day, which is weird, from the 20-year-old, whatever, activist who was not business-minded and probably thought business was evil. And all of a sudden, when I was thinking about, that, and I was like, wait a minute, isn't that kind of like an activist thing? If I can actually, and I was like, wait a minute, what? And then I realized I grew up and I came full circle and I understand things differently now than I did as 20. Because it is. Now I want to create, I want to create good jobs. I want to have good jobs that people are passionate about and that they love like I love mine, because it wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard. I didn't go to school for this. It was hard. There's skill there. It is hard. It's this hard skill set, but it's ultimately, not impossible. It's personality, and you just have to develop. And so, I want to, and also other people. People do not have jobs right now. I don't have any trouble getting contracts. I get them easily. The only problem is I'm limited by how many I can do. Sure. I can't even stop the train. So I have this vision that I could have 100 contracts coming in just to create, if I could get the right 20 people to do the work, just to create a whole bunch of jobs, like a factory of workers that are getting, good careers. You know what I mean? That are because I can bring them in, but I can't without the people. And I don't even know how to start that process. So that'll be a whole learning curve.
Oh, that's great. And for those in our audience that would like to connect with you, what is the easiest way for them to do that?
So you can reach me at by email, if you'll have the spelling and all that, but lamouriepr@gmail.com. On the web, lamouriemedia.com. I live on Facebook, Tracy Lamourie, Instagram, Tracy Lamourie PR Media, or that old telephone technology you guys might remember. You could also call me at 289-788-5881.
Terrific. And we'll make sure we do have your contact information in the show notes. And that brings us to our words of wisdom. And so I came up with this one. I've heard it a few times before. I'm sure you guys have, but I thought it would be appropriate for today's show. And so this is the quote that we're going to go with today. There is only one thing in the world worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. That's Oscar Wilde, and I thought that was appropriate for today's episode.
Love me some Oscar Wilde.
Yes,
I love him. I put a flower on his grave at Père Lachaise in Paris when I was in my 20s.
Yeah. So anyway, in closing, thank you very much for joining us today, Tracy. It's been great. Really enjoyed your story and learning more about PR. I must admit, I did have some ignorance around that area, and I feel like I've been enlightened. So thank you very much.
If you want to try it for a month, you or any listeners, remember, you got to just tell me. I heard it on the podcast. I challenge you to prove it. Pricing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you to my awesome co-host, Juliet. Great job once again. But most importantly, thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in and giving us a listen again and sharing your time. We hope you found some value. If you did, please subscribe. We would love that. We're in all the regular places, iTunes, Spotify, or you can go to the website, smartmansmarterwoman.com. So thank you. Until next time, take good care of yourself and those that you love. Bye for now.